knowledgeable people who up here can answer pretty much any question that you have relating to wheels, tyres and brake ends. So I guess they're essential elements for all heavy vehicles. The panel is going to give you a better understanding around those components and how to improve on your current performance and also extend the life of those particular items. So just 2 weeks ago we seen a pretty significant fire in Tenterfield with a general freight vehicle that caught on fire with a dragging brake. So my comment at the time was it's a terrible thing for Tenterfield for having a truck catch on fire in the middle or the main street of their town, but you can only imagine what that would have been if it was a fuel tanker or a chemical tanker. So significantly important piece of your equipment to get right. So firstly, if I can just ask you, Glenn, there should be a microphone for you, mate. I guess Glenn's a hands-on guy. He's been out in the field a fair bit. Just some, I guess, commentary around the common failings that you see out there and also your advice on correcting those things.
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me here today, and great to see so many people turn up and support the industry. For those that know about electronic brake systems, they're here to stay. As much as you may like or dislike them. Approximately 3 years ago, we were moving, combined with the industry, around 1,500 EBS systems. I'm not going to talk about ABS systems, I'm going to talk about trailer EBS with stability control. It was around 1,500 a year. As of November 2019, it was mandated, and we're now moving around, combined with all suppliers, around 10,000 a year. So that's a lot of red lights. So one of the good things about the dangerous goods industry is that you guys have been doing this longer than anybody. And we're going back 10, 15 years where you were fitting these systems and retrofitting. The things we see that make the red light come on are very basic components like plugs and sockets, damaged plugs and sockets, and wheel speed sensors are a weak link. And until the engineering gurus of the world come up with something that's a bit more bulletproof, we're sort of stuck with what we've got. So they're the three most common failure parts on the electronic side. The things that we see with plugs and sockets, what we see is we're a big believer of crimped pins and not screw-type pins. We're seeing sort of lots more failures with the screw-type pin than we do with the crimped pin. The wheel speed sensors are generally loose through movement of pole rings, or they're broken or they're damaged, and they obviously need fixing. So those three things will put your red light on pretty well automatically. When that happens, we cannot guarantee if we've got stability control, because that's the first thing that's switched off electronically. So the vehicle then must be inspected and fixed and repaired. So when we know these things, because our guys on the service ground see these things all the time, the thing to do then was, okay, so what are the fleets doing to see what have they incorporated into their service schedules in regards to these electronic components? And more often than not, when I look at the A, B, C and service sheets, there's nothing in there. So the guys aren't checking them, so they're not getting repaired because it's not on the sheet, so I'm not going to tick the box. So we highly encourage that. We've also do a lot of service training at workshops, and we try to get fleets to be autonomous and self-diagnose these electronic brake systems so they can stay compliant. So workshop training is very critical, and we provide training programs on site or at other potential facilities. So I encourage all your fleet operators to look at your business and look at your workshops, and if you've not got these on your service sheets, we actually have a generic service sheet we're happy to share so you can incorporate those components in there. So when you get your trailer to your workshop and you're inspecting them and you're diagnosing them, then what do? So we've got to make sure that that trailer leaves the workshop fault-free. So we encourage the mechanic or the workshop technician to save the PDF files and then create folders and directories and then save a fault-free folder so that his job's done. It's left the workshop fault-free. Third-party providers, if you're using those, what are they doing for you in regards to your EBS systems? Are they doing the job? And I know there's a couple of operators here today that we're talking about that at the moment. So that's really important because you're still liable. You still have that chain of responsibility. Some of the other issues that we see away from the components are low air, and Justin just talked about it. We see through the black box technology, through data downloading, low air is a massive issue, and the brakes will drag, and we see a lot of hot brakes and hot fires and premature brake wear because there's a low air issue. I think it's something that needs to be addressed. How we do that as trailer manufacturers or truck manufacturers, I don't know. Don't have all the answers, but we do believe that more air is better. So storage of volume air is much better, especially in road train application. And low voltage is a big issue. So we talked a lot about PBS today, and PBS A-doubles are here to stay, and we're seeing a massive increase or a large increase in general freight. So if you have a 12-volt prime mover and you have 3 EBS systems in a row, basically you've got a 12-volt truck with times 3 trailers with EBS, you have no EBS because it will brown out, and that will then put the red light on, and you're running standard braking system with no stability control. And feel free to come and talk to me about the solutions with that. And I guess one of the other big issues, which is a pet hate of mine for the last 30 years, is low quality brake foundation parts. We see it all the time. Be it brake drums, brake rotors, slack adjusters, S-cams, rollers. You've got to buy the best quality parts you can buy. We see it all the time. We get blamed for premature brake wear, and we're seeing very non-conforming parts, and it's an industry thing that I'd like to see fixed up as well. But education is paramount in regards to these EBS systems, and we're able to help provide some solutions on that, Justin.
Very good. Thanks, Glenn. We'll now hand over to David Norton from Hallmax Tyres. David, can you just, similar thing, what are you seeing out there? What are the common failures, and where do we look at from tyres from a performance base but also preventative measures?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Justin. Look, I suppose purely from a field perspective, what we generally find out there is inconsistent tyre wear or rapid tyre wear. A lot of that comes back to really the education that the tyre providers provide back to the operators. Tyres are, they're very simple products, but fundamentally air carries the load. So if we've got that air wrong in the actual tyre, the tyre will over-deflect or will under-deflect. You'll end up with rapid wear or uneven wear and a higher tyre bill. So I think one of the things that we do, and we manufacture our own tyre specifically for Australia, is we work with our operators to educate them, to educate their service and maintenance teams, and educate the drivers to ensure that the quicker we set up the correct procedures and correct inflation pressures, and then react to any problems, the cheaper it is in the actual marketplace. So that's probably, I think the most important issue from a transport point of view is going to be around education. And what you can and what you can't do with both a tyre and a wheel.
So a question from me is around, I guess, the wear profile of a tyre compared with spring suspension versus airbag suspension. So at times you often get scallop tyres from airbag suspension that's that deep that you have to change the whole tyre, but probably 85% of the tyre's fine. That's probably a common thing in the marketplace, and I guess people say it's airbag suspension, that's the problem, not really. If it was on springs, it wouldn't be doing this, but obviously there's advantages in airbags. So from a tyre wear perspective, what do you guys see at Hallmax?
Yeah, look, I suppose in answer to the inconsistent wear, it's probably, again, doing the haulage profile, both from a loaded haulage cycle and an unloaded haulage cycle. So they're really critical things. Most people don't realise that in actual fact tyres wear on the inside as well. So if you are able to put the time into having the correct pressure plan right from the onset, both for that loaded haulage application and then unloaded, then you'll mitigate that amount of wear. on top of that, to have the regular maintenance intervals and ensuring that you've got, where practical, that you're able to rotate the tyres and so forth and address any mechanical issues along the way. That's where you'll get the best performance out of your tyres. So.
Yeah. So it's more about the application and the specific mode of transport rather than just it's a round tyre, we buy it, we put it on, that's it.
Yeah, a lot of people, it is set and forget. And I suppose when we looked at our particular product, which we've developed over the last 20 years, we've taken that mindset as well, as far as preventative maintenance into the actual design of the tyre. So we try and have some safety components with a deeper, wider tread, a stronger casing, and ensure that we use premium compounds or components when we manufacture the tyre to try and take away some of the actual issues. But nothing comes back to the fact that you've still got to have the correct plan in place. You've still got to understand what the haulage route is, whether it's on a paved surface or unpaved surface, what amount of transport is done in an unladen state, which will generate heat on one spot of the tyre as opposed to another part of the tyre. So, we're always looking for the best footprint that we can have on the actual road and spread the footprint over the best area to ensure that it's the most cost-efficient tyre that you can actually use.
Yep. Very good. Thanks, David. We'll move on to Stefan now with Mica Wheels. So, Stefan, I guess you've recently introduced your tyre monitoring unit. The forged wheels have been out there, but what are you guys seeing in the marketplace in relation to your tyre monitoring system?
Yeah, actually I started out with the Mica Wheel forged wheels operation, and we have grown this business slowly with a couple of manufacturers, and it's within these manufacturers the numbers are increasing. Then we've decided to add the tire pressure monitoring system to it, and we absolutely really added complexity to this. And it took us about 3 years really intensive testing and really trying it out here in Australia, because here Australia is different. There's road trains on the road, so it's different coupling technology is required. So we've done a bit of work, and we ended up with a wheel now that is an integrated sensor, a valve sensor that fits exactly to the wheel, which is a solution I think that was really required for OEMs. They don't want to work with a retrofit sensor that straps onto the inside of the wheel. Even so, that's a good solution for the retrofit market. So mechanically, we have solved it really nicely. The sensor obviously needs to be embedded extremely well so it can do its job over the lifetime, because one thing you need in TPMS, you need a strong signal, and that needs to travel through the whole truck. If you don't have a good signal, don't even get started. So once we've solved that, I think the next big challenge is to find an operator who's really committed to a project like this, because it is a project. It's not something you just start overnight. It is a project. You need to be committed to this project, and you really need to have an operation that's already at a very high level. We can't fill any loopholes for you. You need to have a good operation. You need to have your service procedures in check. And then on top of that, we can add on a TPMS system. And it needs to be also an operator who really gets the maximum out of it, who really looks into the details, because we can offer quite a bit of additional information you normally do not get on the market. So having said that, with an implementation, it really starts with the tire fitters. Their job really changes, and it's quite surprising, especially if you look at younger tire fitters. They're really open to that technology. Our technology works quite easily. They can use it from an app, from a phone, and they're all very good at that. And so starting with the tire fitter, adding that little extra task, instead of not just changing the tire, also looking after a sensor, bringing that sensor back into the rotation. I think that was a very first step, and it's very important for a successful rollout. The next step was really interesting. It was with the truck drivers. I thought there was much more resistance from truck drivers, but it's exactly the opposite. truck drivers want to come home safely. They want to be home without delays. And tires can play a big issue in that scenario. So the good truck drivers I'm working with, they log on in the morning, they check the tire pressure throughout the whole vehicle. If everything is okay, they're ready to go. If it's not okay, they're immediately onto it. They let people know about it. And if everything okay, they take off, and a lot of long-haul trips where you really need to monitor the pressure over the long trip, and they can do that from the unit inside the vehicle. They can log in and they can check what's happening, and I think it really puts them in the driver's seat. And the third layer, which is important for a successful TPMS implementation, is management. And with our tool, we can actually send back data to headquarters. They can easily access it, and they get a lot of data out of that, and they can instantly check which trucks are running, which are running on the right pressures, where do we have issues. So it needs to really have the involvement from the tire fitter over the drivers to management. If we get that right, I think a TPMS project is a good investment, and it's a long-term implementation strategy that will work.
So with that, Stefan, there's options for a retrofit, but also from an OEM, or you would provide the retrofit after the OEM has delivered the vehicle?
So I think my target here is a little bit to get some OEMs interested, because we have a ready solution. You could buy a wheel with a sensor and you bolt it on, and that will really avoid later for an operator to pull off all wheels and pull off all tires, mount the sensor inside a wheel, and put it all back together again. So the easiest way of an installation from an internal tire pressure sensor, and we only do internal tire pressure sensors, is really at day one before the truck goes on the road. But we also have a retrofit solution. That's another really good option. If you're ready to renew your tires, the tires are coming off anyway, stick the sensors in, we get the system up and running in a very short time, and I think it's another really good step to get into the game.
So does it have a display in the cab, or is it done through an app on the phone for the driver?
So practically, we need to keep it super simple. So we only have a little onboard unit mounted on the dashboard. The onboard unit monitors all the repeaters monitor all the sensors, and the onboard unit has got like a 433 megahertz antenna to monitor the situation. It's got a green and a red light, and it's got a buzzer. If anything goes pear-shaped, the light will start flicker and the buzzer will make an alarm. If you then want to know the details, connect your app to that onboard unit and you will immediately see what's going on. It could be a tire pressure alarm, it could be a temperature alarm, it could be some kind of a system failure. The whole system is also monitored. Keeps it simple.
Very good. Thanks, Stefan. Next one is Chet Klein. Chet from CTI. Chet loves tyres, loves inflation, and he will give you the best explanation of tyres that you can generally come across as far as operating conditions. So I'll hand over to you, Chet.
Good morning, everybody. Tyre pressures. It's an interesting story. Almost everybody in this room, including myself for many years, we all ran 100 pounds of pressure in our tyres, and that's what we thought was doing the right thing. People still believe that's the right thing, and unfortunately, it isn't. You get companies like Michelin that will stand behind what they say. They put a lot of effort into actually trying to teach people that tyre pressures should be matched to the load. That means you change the tyre pressure every time you change the load. Now, all the tyre manufacturers provide load to inflation tables. The Australian Tyre and Rim Association has load to inflation tables. The US Tyre and Rim Association, same deal. Even John DuPont, who did a very nice tyre review for the PBS review last year, we run the wrong tyre pressures in our trucks. Steer tyres on almost all of our trucks carry, 3 ton each. That's 6 ton on an axle. And yet we have triaxle trailers that are carrying 1.6 ton per tyre, and we put the same pressure in them. Now that just doesn't make sense if you feel that if the footprint and the performance of the tyre is important. Michelin states that a 20% overinflated drive tyre on Australian roads will wear out 22% faster. I've been in this game with tyre pressure now for over 23 years. We started out quite small. We've slowly worked hard on the business and accumulated an awful lot of information. Our customers save at least 30% in tyre life. They add 30% to their tyres. But that's only a small part of what tyre pressure does for you. The tyres should be your first suspension. They're meant to flex, to give, so that when you go over a bump or a rock or anything else, they give and take up some of the impact from the road. When we have tyres running on drive tyres at 100 pounds when they should have 75 at a full load, or probably 30 pounds when it's empty, they can't flex. They bounce and jump off the ground. They act like a Super Bowl, and they hammer the entire truck to pieces. So they're actually making the truck life. They increase the maintenance requirements. They increase all the damage to the truck. There's some fairly substantial research out that says that drive line life, the diff life and transmission life double when you run the right tyre pressure. Suspension wear and tear reduces by 85%. Even the suspension seats, Weyerhaeuser in the States has just done a report last year, a 65% reduction in suspension seat maintenance. So this gets down to where I wanted to actually talk about today. There's an elephant in the room that's never been addressed in Australia yet. That's driver health. Now, Monash did a great report recently on driver health and confirmed what we all know, that truck drivers have got the shortest life expectancy in the world. They talked about diet. They talked about sedentary lifestyle. They didn't talk about vibration. Now, our roads in Australia are shocking. This trip, it's probably the first trip I've actually done the full-size truck for many years over a long distance. I've got 3 trucks now in my little stable. 2 of them are, one of them's a trade truck, one of them's a single-axle Isuzu prime mover, and I've just recently purchased a Kenworth, which is down at the Brisbane Truck Show right now to show off my product so we can demonstrate it better and present a better image out in the world. We drove from Melbourne, from Morwell, east of Melbourne, up the Cairn River, up the Monaro Highway. Victorian roads are shocking. We got into New South Wales. Oh, what an improvement in roads going up to Canberra. So we got into the ACT, and the roads again were shocking. We managed to roll up the M1 and then the A1. Beautiful roads. But we had to do a detour around to get from the M1 to the A1, wherever that is, this side of Coffs Harbour, sorry. I thought I was in a washing machine. I'm sitting there shaking around, buddy, in this poor little truck, and right now my back's sore. Now, 11, 12 years ago, I went to Scotland for a conference on log trucks and central tyre inflation. What I'm talking about isn't something new. This is stuff that's been around. The US and Canadian governments got together in the early 80s and did research on adjustable tyre pressure systems. The conference in Scotland was called, the overlying title of it was RODEX. I don't quite know what that stood for, but what they did an awful lot of explanation about was the high vibration levels that drivers must exist and put up with. They talked about the damage done to drivers. Now, it starts out with the eyes, the ocular system, the constant vibration shaking up and down and back and forwards is causing damage to the eyes. It causes damage to the brain. It causes damage to the spinal column. It causes damage to the stomach and the general health of these people. Now, in the Northern Hemisphere, this is an important issue. They have conferences all over the place. The US government and the EU government both have the road roughness index. In other words, when the road gets a bit too rough, they fix it. That roughness, before they go to fix it, has been halved in both continents because that damage to the drivers. And we here in Australia aren't doing a damn thing about it. Now, our roads, when you look on the web and check out statistics, is somewhere between 35 countries down from what should be to 42 countries. So there's between 35 and 42 countries in the world have better roads than we do. And yet we let our politicians and our governments get by with this stuff. We don't stand up to these people. Our roads are killing our people. Now, just to bring it back to my personal level, CDI, adjustable tire pressure, is about the only thing that we can do as truck drivers and truck owners is to put the right pressure in the tires. If we are overinflated, the tires just act like hammers and beat us to death. The savings and the potential for our country and for the world is huge. A few years ago, 2018, we came across a government impact study talking about what savings we could do in this country if we adopted all the modern safety things like EBS and ABS and stuff. We were kind of fascinated with this. We did some research on it, reverse engineered this product, and we came back with a study of what would happen if we actually ran the right tire pressure. This impact statement from the government was over 42 years, so it's a long time. If we ran the right tire pressure, we'd save 542 lives, 6,000 serious injuries eliminated, $2 trillion Australian gross savings, medical expenses, tires. We would save 500 million tires in that time. You can imagine the CO2 and all the mining and all the transport that goes into tires. Huge in the environmental issues if we're interested in these sort of things. Unfortunately, we're still running 100 pounds of pressure. Now, I love the tire industry. I love the truck industry. I'm really pleased with where we are and what I'm doing. But the information's out there, but it's not pushed because, if the tire guys tell you all the facts and tell you, this is what you should be doing, you should be doing this, they're going to lose 30% of their sales. My side, of course, is I want you to save that 30% of your stuff. I want your trucks to last longer. I want your drivers to last longer. So I'm having a bit of a speech here and a bit of a meltdown in a way. Tire pressure. We've got to start running the right tire pressures. Now, John DuPont, as I mentioned before in his PBS tire review, stated we should be running 120 pounds in our steer tires because they carry the biggest load and because they're the most important tires. But most of us don't even have a gauge on the dash to tell us what the pressure is in it. We might check it once a week, once a month, and yet, if a steer tire blows, we're in trouble. We usually kill people. Drive tires, tandem drive tires, 16.5-ton load on 11 hours. John DuPont said we should need 75 pounds cold pressure in them. We run 100, most of us. Some people run 110. They're 30% overinflated. Triaxle trailers at 20-ton. Those tires should be running 55 pounds, according to John. Michelin, Goodyear, all the other tire manufacturers, the pressures and stuff, they're all pretty much line ball because all the tires are made to standards. We should be adjusting the tire pressure to what the load is on the truck and the road. Now, my Kenworth, we've just bought a little T350. It's a nice little truck. It's a fairly lightweight truck. We drove up with 23 pounds in the back tires because I've got less than half a ton on each tire. It's like a Toyota Land Cruiser. Nobody would run 100 pounds on a Land Cruiser tire and expect it to do anything right. It won't stop. It won't handle. It's going to kill itself. And it even kills the roads. 100 pounds of pressure is bouncing off of every bump and just is killing our roads. So we're not road friendly. We're not even looking after our own workplace because we're not running the right tire pressures. I believe as an industry and as unions and everybody else involved in this game, we've got to start talking about this whole body vibration. We've got to do some research and get it out there. I don't know why Monash didn't talk about it. It's been in the Northern Hemisphere for 15 years at least. There are reports out of West Australia about vibration in heavy industrial machines, dozers and stuff, but we're not talking about it in trucks. We're killing our drivers. We need to start running the right tire pressures for the load and saving money, saving the environment, and saving our drivers. Thank you.
Thanks, Chet. And you've got a vehicle outside today
I've got my little ute, but my truck is sitting at the Brisbane
the
Truck
truck
Show,
show.
and
Yep.
we've got a full setup of the standard and some interesting videos running and lots of information.
Very good. Thanks, Chet. Now we'll move on to Nemanja Miletic from SAF Suspension, or SAF Holland, I should say. Reggie, I guess a couple of questions there. You've got, is this a set and forget? We buy a new tanker, we put it on the road. Some people are warranting equipment up to 1 million kilometres or 1.2 million kilometres. Can you give us some sort of understanding of what you're seeing out there in the industry, not just particularly with SAF, but with other suspensions as well? And just give us a bit of a rundown on, I guess, the maintenance and inspection process.
Thank you, Justin. So what to say about hubs and bearings that hasn't been said already and that this audience doesn't know already? So I was thinking I would like to start with the statement that bearings are actually a crucial component in order to move the load from place A to place B. Why? Simply because if they seize, collapse, if they fail, the vehicle stays on the road. So it can't move. But the good news is that it doesn't fail overnight and that majority of those issues could be prevented with the good maintenance and inspections. To understand better that process of preventative maintenance, we can't observe bearings as isolated components. We have to think and have a look at complete wheel end as a system. So bearings are the crucial part inside, and they are sophisticated components. They are made of very special steel, hardened, machined in tight tolerances, polished, finished. But the trouble is they have to move. And with moving, they cause friction and they generate the heat. So in order to control that heat, we need a lubricant inside the bearing. To keep the lubricant inside the hub and bearing, we need the good seals. And the majority of the failures actually start with the failed seals or damaged seals. And seals are not there just to prevent lubricant to go out. It's actually preventing the dirt, water, ingredients, and contaminants to actually come inside the hub and to contaminate the bearing. So, as you said, more and more suppliers today supply preset bearings or encapsulated bearings, cartridge bearings that comes with a long warranty and with the maintenance-free label. That's good. And it is what you said, set and forget. It's not even set and forget. They are preset for you, so you don't even need to set them, but definitely you can't forget them. So what I would like to say that maintenance-free is not inspection-free. So still, the regular inspection and checks has to be performed. And there are 3 simple steps that could prevent major issues later on. So the first point of inspection would be to inspect the seals and amount of grease of lubricant coming out of those seals. Some small amount is acceptable because the hub has to breathe and the grease will go out. Any excessive amount of grease is sign that something's going on with that bearing. Second inspection will be the noise. We all know about that. We'll lift the axle, we spin the wheel, and we are listening if there is a noise. At the end, we need to check end play of the bearing. So if any of those 3 parameters are not within limits, then that's alarm bell to increase attention to that particular wheel end. It's not going to fail overnight, but you can pick it up and do more frequent monitoring. If it's not fixed, then it has to be replaced. So one of those 3 steps can save you time, can save money, can save you further hassle. So yeah, it is set and forget, but it's not
Yep.
to forget completely.
Very
Thanks.
good. Thank you very much. Move on to Peter. Peter, with LSM, with some vehicles in Europe, particularly passenger vehicles, they have mandatory fitting of tyre pressure maintenance. And I guess I'd like a bit of an explanation on that and your thoughts on that. And also, is there an ability to remotely monitor tyres using those type of systems so that the business can be in a situation where they're not being reactive, they're being proactive?
Thank you, Justin. Thank you to the Bulk Tanker Association for inviting me to the panel. Firstly, tyre monitoring systems are a proven mitigation control technology to prevent incidents of wheel well fires, or for that matter, even blowout. They monitor the temperature as well as the pressure in the tyre and relay that back to an in-cabin monitor to the driver so they can make immediate correction. And then, of course, as you mentioned, this data can also be taken through the telematics system and then accumulated for analytics as well as for proof of compliance and also for monitoring of what's happening to a fleet. The tyre monitoring systems are nearly becoming mandated. And why should they be mandated? I mean, consider the example at Tenterfield recently. I mean, it was a dragging axle, lock brakes. Had it got a tyre monitoring system on it, it would have related to the temperature over 80 degrees from the rim and would have alerted the driver, he would have taken corrective action. So potentially, it might not have occurred. An example as well, some years back you would know about the Charlesville explosive nitrate truck that blew up. Again, if you look at the reports, it was a result of fire either from the engine or be it from a wheel well incident. If you look at what the Bus Industry Confederation Fire Advisory Council did about 5 years ago, where they monitored bus fires. At one stage there was, in New South Wales alone, 70 buses burnt down as a result of both engine and 54% from wheel well. So lock brakes, under pressurisation. They implemented a $35 million program, and currently at the moment Transport for New South Wales run 4,000 buses with tyre monitoring systems, primarily to mitigate potential fires. The last report this year is that 54 to 55% of thermal events actually come from the wheel well. The Department of Natural Resources and Mines, the Department of Mines and Petroleum in WA have now put into their tyre guidelines a requirement for tyre monitoring systems. Pyrolysis is a major problem in mining tyres and an explosion, but also with fires. If you look at the NHVR, they've started up now a truck fire safety round table, of which LSM is a contributing member to that. If we look at CICA, the Crane Industry Council, they've written some papers on requirements of set point pressures for cranes for pick and carry, because they tend to want to roll over. Pyrolysis on larger mobile cranes, which are now running on roads rather than on floats backwards and forwards to sites. And then I suppose lastly, as far as mandating is concerned, look at what's happened in our passenger vehicle. Every vehicle in the world now, like seat belts, is mandated to have tyre monitoring systems in there. And there's got to be a reason for that. And as far as remote data is concerned, other benefits of tyre monitoring systems are that you can maintain set point pressures. You can target what you require to repressurise the tyres at an appropriate time. For example, one of our clients runs 3,000 tyres, and every 6 minutes temperature and pressure is brought back into the telematics system and it's analysed, and immediately they can actually target which tyres are in trouble. When that road train of 96 tyres comes into the workshop, they can then target the respective tyres that need a repressurisation. You do not have to check every one of them. And anybody knows if you've got 2,000 tyres at 1.5 to 2 minutes, do the mathematics on how long you need to actually do that process. In addition, a number of our customers are contractors, and their end user or their customer requires that they check the tyre for pressures and for condition. If you've got 2,000 odd tyres, you need to provide a report. You're going to end up having 3 arch lever folders of tyre pressure tables and everything. Using it back into a telematics system means that you can just have a hyperlink to a report. You can automatically run reports. You can send them by email. There is no overuse of paper, and that data can remain there to be analysed later. So at the end of the day, the tyre monitoring system, as I said, is already a proven technology mitigation control. It is near mandated in heavy vehicles. And it has side benefits as well, as far as maintaining set point pressures means that you can get an increased service life in your tyre, you have increased braking, traction and also control, as well as, again, targeting set point and reducing labour in repressurisation.
Thank you, Peter. Excellent. So I guess, yeah, the information, the technology is out there. Tenterfield's a pretty good example. Surely the prevention would be better than having something like that occur, particularly in the bulk tanker space. So if I can get you to put your hands together for our 6 panel members, please.